Hi guys, it's Janae and welcome back to my channel, and today we are continuing the read-along for ErHa Volume 7. Are we on 7? I feel like we're on 7. We're on 7. And I just saw the cover reveal for Volume 9 and it is gorgeous. So, like, the artist for this just does phenomenally, and I'm also kind of glad that you can't really infer a lot of spoilers from the art, but then in hindsight, once you've read the book, the art makes a lot of sense. So that's really, I love that. Hi. Um, Quick thing, I am still not feeling the best. I thought I would be able to do the 3 hours, but I keep coughing and my voice gets tired very easily, so we're gonna do an hour and see how I feel. I actually had to go back and check where we left off because the last stream was just a blur to me. But anyway, ready for the trauma? Great. Yeah, no, we love the trauma. We're here for the trauma. So yeah, for anyone else who needed the recap, we were in the middle of I almost said Tashinjin. Moran having a nightmare within a nightmare within a nightmare, so that is very reassuring. I'm stressed. So we left off on page 101 for anyone who wants to follow along. And we're on chapter 219. Don't leave me. That sounds like I'm about to cry again. I don't have tissues with me. Okay. Because we only have an hour, I don't want to wait around too much, so I think we're just gonna jump into it and hopefully, if people show up, they show up. So let's get going. Moran said nothing, or perhaps there was nothing he could say. He stepped forward and pulled Chuaning into his arms. What's gotten into you? Holding him like this, Moran could feel the warmth of Chuaning's body even through the cool cloth of his robes. Ooh. Are you crying? He didn't know if this was a dream or reality. He no longer knew anything with certainty except that Chuaning's cold corpse was no longer lying in the Red Lotus Pavilion. His Shizun was still alive, still worrying about the flexibility of these holy night guardians' joints, and whether they should be sealed with tung oil or clear lacquer. I feel like this directly disproves the thing that the nightmare was trying to convince Moran of, which is good, I guess, is the fact that you were trying to convince us that you didn't actually sorry, my words. The nightmare was trying to convince Moran that Moran tried to die and didn't succeed or something to that effect, and yet here Chuaning is. So clearly someone somewhere is lying, and we kind of know who. This was enough. Moran drowned himself in it, refusing to wake. He and Chuaning finished the automaton together. When it was dark, he led Chuaning back to his room and tangled his limbs with his shizuns, just as he had in the past life. The Chuaning in this dream wasn't so easily tamed. He remained vicious in some respects. Recalcitrant? In others. I am not sure if I pronounced that correctly. He remained... even as his climax crashed over him, he gritted his teeth in silence, sharp eyes misted with tears. Only the roughness of his breathing escaped his control. The candles were lit. Their lights shone upon the face of the well-ravished man beneath him. Moran drank in Chuaning's features with hunger, adoring eyes. Sorry, I'm struggling a little bit. Let's take a moment. Because I'm just realizing that this might be a different approach to achieving the same result, because the nightmare was trying to convince Moran to basically stay trapped in the nightmare. Now Moran is still trapped in the nightmare, but now he is kind of willing for it because of how terrifying the previous nightmare had been. Which is not good. Also, sorry, hi. Okay, let's try being better about it now. Drank in Chuaning's features with hungry, adoring eyes. He watched as Chuaning's black pupils filled with the reflection of the candles. The light flickered like petals fallen into a deep pond. When Moran moved, those petals swirled and drifted in the waters, rippling outward. Eventually, tears ran from the ends of Chuaning's eyes. Moran kissed them away. He knew too well what Chuaning was like. Without the use of aphrodisiacs, he rarely made any noise in bed. His self-control was regretfully unshakable. But what did it matter? Chuaning couldn't control the wetness of his eyes, nor his helpless panting. So what if he didn't moan? It was enough for Moran to sleep with him to the point of tears. To see his eyes glaze over, to see his chest heave with desperation. Their night of pleasure stretched into the small hours of the morning, when they finally fell asleep wrapped in each other's embrace. Moran held Chuaning tightly in his arms. Their bodies lay pressed together, bare skin warm against bare skin, sweat-damp hair tacky on their cheeks. He planted ardent and tender kisses on Chuaning's ear and the pale column of his throat, then pulled him even tighter into his arms. "This is all I need, Shizun. Just you, by my side." He slept. When he woke, he found the bed empty. "Shizun?" Jolting upright, he saw Chuaning standing at the half-open window. Day had broken, and a misty rain shimmered down outside. Moran let out a sigh of relief and reached out a hand. "Shizun, come here." But Chuaning didn't move. His robes were neat and as white as driven snow. He looked quietly at the man on the bed. Gazing at him, Moran felt a pulse of violent unease. "Moran," Chuaning said, "it's time for me to go." "Go?" Moran stared. The blankets were still warm. There were strands of hair on the pillow and a faint musky scent in the sheets, but Chuaning looked so distant he seemed to be standing on a far-off shore. "Where are you going?" Moran asked anxiously. "This is the Red Lotus Pavilion. You're home." "You're already home. So where are you going?" Chuaning shook his head. He turned back to the pale dawn gathering outside the window. "There's no time. It's almost morning." The nervousness I'm feeling right now. "Wan Ning?" He blinked. Nothing more. Then the room was empty, as if Chuaning had never been there. Moran threw on his clothes and scrambled out of bed, forgetting his shoes as he staggered outside. A nighttime breeze had strewn this courtyard with 1,000 snowy petals. The flourishing bows of high-tongue blossoms were nearly bare, fallen flowers littering the steps, table, and chairs. A finished Holy Night Guardian lay on the stone table, with a metal glove and file tossed carelessly down beside it, as if Chuaning had just left, as if he would be back any moment. "Wan Ning? Wan Ning!" Moran sprinted through the Red Lotus Pavilion as if mad, searching for him, yet avoiding the lotus pond with unerring accuracy. He subconsciously feared the place. He dared not go. But he wandered deliriously toward it in the end, his feet bare against the freezing slabs of stone. He was still a fair distance away when he stopped. Numbness crept up his body, rising from his pale feet all the way to his face. Drained of color as he gazed at the man within the lotus pond, eyes wide in mute shock. "I don't have a pillow with me. When am I gonna learn? Oh my word." Moran walked out of the pond with Chuaning in his arms, the icy corpse tightly clasped to his chest. Something he'd always wanted to do in his last life, yet somehow never did. He clutched at Chuaning's body. That misty rain fell unceasingly. The sky in the east continued to bite him, but it had nothing to do with him. He clutched Chuaning and cried, pressing his face to Chuaning's and kissing his nose, lashes, and lips. Shizun, I'm begging you. Please pay attention to me. Please. In that moment, his silhouette seemed to recall that of an orphan sobbing over the rotting body of his mother in the burial grounds. The boy who dragged passerby to bury him with his mom. Begged. He'd been only 5 years old. A 5-year-old child who swore he'd never again watch his loved ones become a pile of rot while he looked on helplessly. Years had passed in the blink of an eye. The 32-year-old Tashinjin clung to Shizun's body and fell into fits of crazed laughter broken by bouts of sobbing as he caressed the corpse. A corpse that looked just as the man had in life. He'd done it. Could make a dead man look alive. There was almost a faint flush to the dead man's cheeks, his face so peaceful he might have merely fallen asleep. This time, he didn't beg anyone to bury him alongside Chuaning. Tashinjin had already buried himself alive. The day after Chuaning died, he drank a jar of pear blossom white wine, and with every day that came after, he'd sat in the mausoleum to the living dead called the Red Lotus Pavilion and drunk himself into a stupor. He had been buried 6 feet under since that day. Shizun, please pay attention to me. Moran! Please pay attention to me. He seemed to hear a familiar voice calling his name. As darkness fell around him once more, he clutched at the sound like a drowning man clutching a piece of driftwood. A hand reached out to him. He sobbed, grabbing it tightly. Don't go. I won't do anything bad or evil ever again. I'll never make you angry. Moran clung to the person's hand, their fingers intertwining. He smelled like the faint scent of high-tongue flowers. I have a resurrection pill, but I don't know what happened. I couldn't find it anymore. I can't find it. But could you still stay with me? Please? He blindly sought the warmth of that unknown person and held them tight. Please. I'd rather I was the one who died. Moran, wake up. But he couldn't wake up. He was drowning in an agony deeper than the ocean. He couldn't wake up. Sobs caught in his throat as he latched tightly to the person calling his name, his eyes overflowing with tears. I'd rather die instead, Shizun. Damn dog, what are you trying to do? Hey, you! Is Shimeng to the rescue here? He felt someone rush over and grab him. There was a brief scuffle, and a hand poured a freezing liquid down his throat. It was cold, like dark ice left frozen for 1,000 years, filling him until his insides cracked with frost. His eyes snapped open. Oh! Jiangxi's displeased face came into focus. He and Shimeng are made for each other, aren't they? A jade bottle in his hand. It had obviously held whatever he'd just been forced to drink. Moran heard the hoarseness of his voice the moment he spoke, and fell silent. He looked around and saw that he'd returned to the ancestral temple. He sweated through all his many layers of robes, and those around him watched him strangely. Shimeng in particular. His face was awful to look at, turning greenish and pale in turns. Do we want to know what they encountered when they found Moran? Get a pillow of a Danmei villain face so you can squeeze and punch it when needed. If only we had things like that here. Okay. Lying in Chuaning's lap, his arms wrapped tightly around Chuaning's waist. As he dreamt, he'd pulled Chuaning's neat robes into complete disarray. One sleeve of his outer robe had nearly come completely off his shoulder. He paused. Had he said anything he shouldn't? Fair concern. Chuaning's expression was unsightly as well, but he still held his composure. Why did you rush ahead so quickly? Shizun, I just... You were caught in a nightmare. Jiangshi put the bottle away and stood, casting his eyes downward. Rest for a while. I gave you a dream wake frost. You'll feel cold, but it'll fade in a few minutes. Moran had not fully shaken off those layers of nightmares. His eyes were still glassy. A long beat of silence followed before he mumbled, "A nightmare? But I was careful. I didn't notice any trace of spells." "Spells?" Jiangshi asked, hackles raised. "What use are those stupid things?" "As opposed to what?" Silence greeted that proclamation. "You think spells are the world's most vicious, lethal, and invisible weapon?" This medicine sect leader narrowed his eyes, sweeping his sleeves back as he spoke in tones of purest disdain. "Wrong on all counts. The world's most formidable weapon is medicine." That's clever. I mean, he continued coolly. The temple was filled with a type of incense known as 19 hells. The substance is colorless and odorless, but those who breathe it in sink into an illusion of their greatest fear. At this, Jiangshi paused and looked Moran up and down. The greater the fear, the deeper the illusion. I've rescued a few people caught in a 19 hells nightmare before, but they woke up after 4 or 5 drops of dreamwake frost. You know how much you drank. Crap, okay. How much? Jiangshi seemed rather vexed. Most of the bottle. The amount required to wake you is enough to save 100 ordinary people. Now riddle me this, Mo Zongshi. How do you have such a deep-rooted fear at your young age? What is it that you're so afraid of? Maybe don't have him disclose this. Not that I think he is gonna, but still, maybe don't ask this where we know the enemy might be listening. Oh, hi. Ugh, I'm stressed. Okay. At least we got this resolved within this chapter. I was kind of wondering if we would. Okay. Chapter 220, Side by Side. Moran fell silent. Until this dream, not even he knew the scale of the terrors that lurked in his heart. His fear of Chuaning dying, of being questioned about his feelings for MEI, his fear that this entire lifetime was no more than an ephemeral dream. He lowered his head. For some reason, because of the dreamwake frost, or something else, he was so cold he was shaking. Chuaning got to his feet. There were too many eyes upon them. He and Moran couldn't do anything to betray how close they were, especially considering how Moran had clung to him and cried his name in the dream. Oh crap, okay, so he did say something. If he hadn't fought back, Moran might have shoved him to the ground right here in public. It hadn't gone quite to that point, but Moran's reaction had been so intense, Chuaning wasn't sure what these bystanders had picked up on. He slowly straightened his spine. He'd been sitting so long, his legs were a mass of pins and needles. Shumeng instinctively reached out, but for some reason, he didn't go to help Chuaning up. It was MEI who extended an arm and softly said, "Shizun, rest for a while." Chuaning lowered his lashes. Without a word of excuse or explanation, he struggled off his loosened outer robe. It fell around Moran's shoulders with a flutter of fabric. "Wear this. You can give it back after the cold has faded." Moran didn't dare look at him too long either. Shizun. Everyone else had scattered to investigate the hall or search for triggers for hidden traps. Zhizhengyong asked Moran a few questions and, after being reassured of his nephew's health, patted his shoulder and walked towards the other sect leaders. Okay, so my question is the joy and sorrow display that he saw when he walked into the hall. That must have been real to some extent because he saw it like as soon as he entered, unless the incense is that fast acting, but I don't feel like it is. So is that still taking place, or has that illusion dissipated? Like, what is going on here? Moran isn't giving back that out of the rope now. Okay. Only Shimeng stayed where he was. Once everyone was far enough away, he bent down, glancing around, and whispered in tones of suppressed wrath, "What the hell did you dream about?" Moran said nothing. "Answer me," Shimeng ground out. "It was just a dream, that's all. Whatever it was, it's all stuff that's in your heart." The light in Shimeng's eyes was as scattered as his wits. "What were you thinking about? Are you? I dreamt I killed people." The bone-deep cold made Moran shiver. Even his lips were white. "I dreamt I killed Shizun." "You! That's all, nothing else." Shimeng's lips quivered, as if he wanted to ask more, yet Moran didn't sound like he was lying. But he said he dreamt about killing Shizun. Leaving aside the question of why Moran feared this when he cared so deeply for his teacher, that expression on his face earlier, when he'd been clutching at Chuaning, was that an emotion a disciple would display? Was there not something else there too? Something like he dared not finish that thought. It felt as if he were steps away from the edge of an endless abyss. The effect of the medicine gradually faded. Moran moved to stand. After hesitating a moment, Shimeng helped him to his feet. "Thank you," said Moran. He looked over the other cultivators. "Was anyone else affected by the incense?" "Just you. You ran too fast." Shimeng, although still glum, was less volatile now. Jiangxi recognized the 18 demons something incense the minute we entered. Not 18 demons, 19 hells. I mean, close enough, I guess. Whatever, the name doesn't matter. He concocted an antidote before we came in, so it was fine. Shimeng paused, suddenly remembering something. But we were lucky. If the timing had been different, it would have been bad. What happened? You ran ahead too quickly, so you didn't see it. When we were on the way up the temple, a whole bunch of venomous snakes slithered out of Nangong Liu's basket. Oh, great! A ton of people were bitten, and they all had to stay behind and rest. The venom was really strong. Jiangxi told us to go on ahead while he stayed behind to help. If that had happened, all these people would have fallen prey to the incense as soon as they reached the temple. Shimeng said, "He only has one bottle of Dream Wake Frost. It wouldn't have been enough to treat everyone." Moran felt a prickle of unease. Then why didn't he stay? One of his disciples said he knew how to neutralize the toxin, so Jiangxi left him there and came up with us. Thank heaven for that disciple, because I bet you that's exactly the opposite of what's the guy's name? The new version of Moran, who's not really Moran but might as well be. That guy. My brain is flat at the moment, sorry. Moran furrowed his brow. His eyes roved over the greed group one by one, but he didn't see the silhouettes he sought. If Jiangxi's disciple hadn't known a cure of that type of venom, there were only two people who could have stayed behind. One was Jiangxi, and the other was Hua Binan. We've probably met Hua Binan before, but I can't remember him. Where's Hua Binan? Shimeng blinked. You suspect Hanlin the Sage? It's just a question. There's nothing suspicious about his absence. Hua Binan got bitten too, so he stayed behind to meditate. But he's already got a lot of toxins in him. They said he just needs to rebalance himself before joining us. Convenient. Because that's a foolproof way to take yourself out of the equation without it seeming suspicious. But we'll hold off on judging him too much. Moran's expression darkened. If Hanlin the Sage was so injured he couldn't move, then only Jiangxi could have stayed behind to help. How lucky Jiangxi had a disciple who knew the particular venom. Otherwise, Jiangxi might have had to stay behind to treat the wounded. By the time he came up, what kind of scene would he have encountered? Would one bottle of Dreamwork Frost have been enough to fix things? Not with Moran being like the endless consumer that he was. Shimon? Be careful around Huabinan. The words hung in the air. Suddenly the ground shifted. A sound like a distant dragon's cry broke through the skies outside the hall. One of the more skittish cultivators exclaimed, "What's happening? What was that?" Sorry, my parents just came to get Juliet out of the room because they just returned from their dinner. And she just came back from the hospital today because our entire family was just down and out for the count last week. But anyway, so she's very happy to see them right now. Okay. One of the brave ones replied, "I'll go take a look." The brave man rushed outside and looked up and down. "Don't worry," he said when he turned back around. "The mountain probably just makes that sound from time to time. It used to be the spirit of a demon dragon, after all." As he lifted his foot to head back inside, he found it was stuck. A bone-white hand wrapped around his ankle. Oh, great! Stupefied, he stared down in silence. Shizun sharp eyes saw it at once. "Look out!" he shouted, but it was too late. A corpse leapt out of the darkness, garbed in the crane robes of Rufung. A ribbon bound its eyes, and the blade of its sword had cut straight through the cultivator's chest. Oh, great! The man's eyes were wide and confused. He reached out numbly, touching the blade, then spat out a stomach full of blood and collapsed to the ground, unmoving. The earth began quaking once more. Everyone looked out the hall doors to see thick bands of dragon sinew bursting out of the ground and whipping into the air, each bloody length wrapped around the body of a dead Rufung disciple. From a distance, it looked like a swarm of wasps that had congregated in the sky above them, one ready to smash the hall's current inhabitants into a bloody pulp. Master Ma covered his eyes with a cry. "Oh, no, 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 we're all gonna die." Listening to this infuriating merchant's wailing, Shizun could have spit blood. He shut Master Ma's mouth with a smack to the back of his head, then shouted at the assembled crowd, "Close the doors! Seal the frickin' doors! Don't let them in!" Shizun rushed at the first reverend, swaying with its bloodied sword in hand. I don't know why I'm laughing. Just Shizun is something else. I don't know. I will pass the hello on to Juliet. With a flick of his fan, he pushed it away from the building, then kicked it down the long steps. Taking hold of one of the great doors of the spiritual stone, he strained to close it with a grunt. But for some reason, those doors were easy to push open, but impossible to pull shut. Of course they are. Shizun pulled them so hard veins protruded on his forearms, but all his might had as much effect as a drop of water in the ocean. The dragon sinew were puppeteering the corpses ever closer. "What's going on?" Shizun roared. "Didn't Nangong Changying just seal them all in?" "This asshole dragon is fighting its own master." Moran and Shumeng had both run over to help Shizun. "It's no use," Nangong shouted. "The spiritual stones from the doors were hauled here by 4,000 porters and my great-grandfather's command. You can't close them by yourselves." "Oh, great." Smoke seemed to puff from Huang Xiaoye's ears. "Your great-grandfather sounds like a real piece of work." That's putting it mildly. Oh, goodness. Nangongsa ignored him entirely. He turned to the group fending off Wufengsek's reverence and cried, There's a mechanism inside that triggers the hall's doors. Keep them off a while, I'll activate it. Xu Jingyong's fan moved so fast it looked like black smoke in his hands as he wielded it. With one flick, it flung more corpses away, leaving black blood splattering across the word, "She is beautiful." But these bodies were those of mighty warriors. They stood up again as soon as they fell to the bottom of the stairs and continued their assault. "Hurry up!" Xu Jingyong turned to yell. "There's more of them." What the hell is happening? Moran summoned Jiang Ye. We have Jiang Ye back. I never thought I'd be this happy to see Jiang Ye, but anyway. The doors at... Sorry, Jiang Gui? My bad. Jian Gui. Oh. That makes sense. Sorry. The doors were their last line of defense. He rushed out to engage directly with the Reverend on the stairs, but right away he ran into difficulty. He couldn't use all his strength on the narrow steps, and he had to be careful not to step off into thin air and tumble from the sky. One lash of his whip knocked down a line of crawling corpses, only for the stinking dragon sinew to bring up more and more monsters around him. He was soon surrounded, lost in a sea of corpses with no way out. But Moran wasn't intent on escape just yet. The Reverend sought out the smell of humans, and he presented the closest targets. Nearly all the corpses ran mindlessly towards him. "Aya," Master Ma sighed as he crowded, trembling behind Jiang Xi. "How impressive Mozongshi is. How powerful indeed. Sir, go be bait if you're not going to be quiet, okay?" Jiang Xi turned, annoyed. "Are you of no use beyond selling things?" "Thank you." I'm liking Jiang Xi more and more, if I'm being honest. "The things I'm good at is taking time to develop. Arrays, techniques, weapon modification. I'm no good at hand-to-hand combat." Master Ma met Jiang Xi's freezing gaze and choked. Squirming, he tentatively said, "I could maybe cheer you guys on." "Thank you, at the very least." Jiang Xi stared. To be fair, Master Ma wasn't wrong. Each sect had their strengths and weaknesses. When facing bloody conflict, not everyone could charge into a fray and walk out alive. Some would merely be rushing to their own deaths. Even Jiang Xi himself hung back this time. Poison powders were useless on the dead. Shimeng stood before the doors with long chin unsheathed, eyes fixed on the black-garbed silhouette rising and falling amid the sea of crane-garbed shadows. One bloody vine flew into the air, carrying a strong Rufeng disciple directly towards Moran. Unable to stand by any longer, Shimeng rushed over with a sword in hand and hacked off the corpse's arm. He pressed his back against Moran's, slashing another twisted vine apart. Blood sprayed into the air. "Mangar!" Jingyong howled. "Come back! It's fine, we've got this." It was clear whom he meant by we. Moran turned his face slightly to Shimeng. "Hurry back, I can handle this alone. You be the second line of defense. Once I'm tired, you can..." Not gonna lie, I'm a sucker for their teamwork because of how terribly opposed to each other they were in the past life. Like, they've really come so far. And we have art! Okay, I'm not going to be able to focus on anything before I show you guys the art, so let's just appreciate it before we continue. It is so beautiful. Okay. "Shut up." Long Cheng sang in Shimeng's hand as he crouched. "Who took first place at the Spiritual Mountain competition? You or me? Who's the young master of Sishan Peak? You or me? Who's stronger? You or me?" Moran said nothing. Chest blazing with warmth, he fell silent and turned all his attention to fighting back to back with Shimeng, fending off the corpses pressing in on all sides. They heard the rumble of the stone doors slowly closing inward. Overjoyed, Xu Jingyong whooped. "They're moving! The doors are closing! Hurry up, you two! Come back! Get over here!" Moran and Shimeng were fighting in perfect concert, the red glow of Jiang Gui dancing alongside Long Cheng's scarlet gleam. Metal clashed as they knocked a wave of corpses down to the clouds. bands of dragon sinews spurting blood as they were cut. They backed towards the temple as the doors groaned shut. You go in first, Shimeng said. We'll go together, said Moran. Met with Shimeng's blank stare, he cried, Hurry up, what are you waiting for? Hurry, Shi Jingyong bellowed from his side. Get inside! Moran grabbed Shimeng by the lapels. Let go, Shimeng raged. Don't act the hero here. Who's acting the hero? Time to go! Moran yanked Shimeng back and leapt up the stairs, snapping Jingui in a backhand lash and sending a last cluster of corpses flying. With Shimeng in tow, he leapt towards the doors, still only half closed. They had plenty of time to spare. Don't ever think that. That is like... Have we learned nothing about how these stories work? You would think Moran would be more careful about his slow processes at this point, because everything backfires the moment he thinks something like that. I'm sorry, can you tell I'm stressed? Ran through Shimeng towards Shi Jingyong and turned to face the horde outside. He took slow steps back towards the doors, eyes and willow vine alike sparking flame. Suddenly, the massive stone doors ground to a halt. Oh, hell no. Why did they stop? Shimeng exclaimed. He turned and saw Nang Gongse walking out from behind one of the massive stone pillars, ashen-faced. The winch of the mechanism has been destroyed, he said, voice hollow. The chain snapped. I can't reattach it, sorry. He raised his hand. Gripped in his wounded fist was a segment of bronze chain, clanking in the air. I swear they did that just to, like, give everyone hope, only to destroy that hope at the last minute. It feels like something that guy would do. Hi, sorry, can I ask if you will be uploading your stream VODs of... Oh, yes, I will be. I just haven't had time to edit them yet, and they take quite a while to edit. So they're not the priority at the moment, because they're only going up on Patreon. But yeah, they will come eventually. And also, I have been sick recently, so I haven't been able to prioritize work as much as I would have liked. Okay. Next chapter. Chapter 221, Hand in Hand. I hope that's as romantic as it sounds and not absolutely tragic. Shimeng nearly spat blood. Moran didn't have energy to spare. As soon as he heard Nang Gongse's words, he turned back and resumed fighting the corpses, acting as the first line of defense. Chuaning had been helping Nang Gongse work on the clearly sabotaged mechanism. When he saw Moran outside, fighting alone, he flew to the doors and shouted, Moran, come back! Shizun. Chuaning slammed the door down a golden barrier which flung the nearest corpse back down the steps as it activated. He set up the barrier on the stairs, the entryway, and the gap between the doors, then dragged Moran aside. Stop fighting. Shizun, we're still within the bounds of Mount Jiao. Your barriers won't last. There's no need for this. Facing a maelstrom of fury, Chuaning gritted his teeth and shoved Moran deeper into the hole. Bleeding all over and still trying to get yourself killed out there? Go sit down and meditate. Shiming-jing. Oh my goodness. I don't know why, but that just felt very, like, mother of him right there. Shizun, I'm here. Chuaning jabbed a finger at Moran. See to his injuries. Shimei nodded. Yes, Shizun. Moran stilled. Shimei's outstretched hand... Moran stilled Shimei's outstretched hand, then said to Chuaning, who'd already turned his back, Shizun, these are superficial wounds. Your barriers won't last more than half an hour here, and they'll drain your spiritual energy. Chuaning didn't turn to look at him from where he stood, facing the light of the barrier. Then I'll survive half an hour. I don't like that. Also, there was mention of, like, I feel like I mentioned this before, of Chuaning having a reaction when he encountered Bugui in this timeline, and obviously a part of me wonders if that is leftover reaction from, like, the first timeline's encounter with Bugui, or if that's maybe his mysterious third weapon, because I don't think we've ever seen his third weapon in action, but I feel like if it's... sorry. I feel like if the third weapon isn't Bugray, which I don't necessarily think it is, but it has crossed my mind. I feel like we'll only find out what the third weapon is in like the penultimate volume or in the final volume. Okay. Before Moran could argue again, MEI pulled him back. His cool fingers brushed Moran's skin as he rolled up his sleeve and began casting healing spells over his wounds. When Moran met his gaze, MEI shook his head wordlessly before lowering his lashes and focusing on his work. Shimeng, said Chuaning, "Here, Shizun. Once I'm spent, you take over. Don't overdo it. As soon as you feel drained, sect leader, you take over next." "Right," Shizhen hastily answered. "It's better to take turns." Chuaning poured his spiritual energy into the three barriers. "There's something else I'd like to ask of you, sect leader." "Go on." Those useless shirkers cowering in the back. Other than those of Tashia Palace and Guyu, who aren't suited to hand-to-hand combat, bring everyone who can fight over here, he said through gritted teeth. What if they won't come? Then they can sit there and die when the doors are breached. Maybe that will motivate them. Zhu Zhengyong diligently ran off. Nang Gongse hadn't moved, still staring glumly at the broken chain in his hands, unsure what to do. Why had the sect's founder's command broken so suddenly? An order from Nangong Changying couldn't be countermanded by anyone. So why would it? Shi Jingyong was rounding up those who could. Shi Jingyong was rounding up those who could step out and help with their defense. "I'll go," said Ye Wangxi. Nang Gongse snapped back to his senses and stopped her. "You're a girl. How could you?" Nang Gongse, shh. Like, you sacrificed your call for all of this? You can't be talking about who gets to sacrifice what. No, it's okay. Don't worry. I'm just saying. Moran just got put in the naughty corner. It feels like it, doesn't it? But what frustrates me is that this feels very much like their only option right now is defense. And, you know, that defense is gonna run out at some point, so I just don't know how they're gonna be able to turn this around. They better, because, like, we still have freaking, what, 4 volumes to go? So... Yewangshi stared at the spineless herd of Jiangdong Hall disciples mulling about, whispering to each other. "Even if Wufeng Sect's been reduced to 2, she said coldly, "there are no cowards among our number." It's just making me think of the, like, oh, there is not a single man to be seen among Wufeng Sect that she made comments of in her first life. The woman who'd mocked her for stepping up despite her gender was silent now. They slid their eyes away, avoiding Yuangqi's gaze. Zhu Zhengyong gathered a few more people. When he saw the next volunteer, he stared in shock. "HANXUE? Why have you... No, you're not used to this kind of fighting. Go back." What did... Oh wait, MEI HANXUE. Oh, no. MEI HANXUE was icy today. Sorry, I was confusing him with Hanlin the sage. MEI HANXUE was icy today. Don't worry, uncle. I know what I'm doing. I won't mess around. Zhu Zhengyong looked at the leader of Tashio Palace, but she seemed unbothered, so there was nothing you could say. MEI HANXUE stepped up to join their group. Jiangxi frowned. "Should we really keep everyone here to hold them off like this? It'd be better if we sent a few firefighters to see..." Sorry, my brain. Firefighters. A few fighters. Oh no, this is chaos. to see what's in the back of the hole. Right now, it's best to stall for time and see if we can fix the mechanism before exploring. If it can't be fixed, we'll split into two groups, one to stay here and one to go investigate. Xu Zhengyong answered. That's reasonable. But does anyone know how to repair it? A shaking hand rose in the air. Thank you, Master Ma. I was about to suggest that you better do it if he hadn't come forward and volunteered himself. Master Ma, who'd earlier shrunk in on himself like a turtle at Jiang Shi's scathing criticism, poked his head out once again. He said timidly, I can give it a try. Jiang Shi scoffed. Then why are you still standing here? Master Ma grabbed Nang Gongse's arm and scampered off, while Xu Zhengyong led his group of fighters back towards the doors. Jiang Shi turned to look at the hole that had been split into heaven and hell, sinking into thought. He stared at those Zhenlong chess pawns who were on one side giggling and chattering with each other, and on the other enduring all manners of torture. At last his gaze came to rest on Nang Gongliu, who was sitting blankly next to his basket of tangerines. He found it all passing strange. Why hadn't Nang Gongliu or any of the other pawns in the hole gone berserk and tried to murder them like the corpses outside? It's a very fair question. If Xu Shuanglin took control of the pawns here to attack from within the hole, the cultivators would find themselves trapped and assailed from two sides. I hadn't even had a chance to worry about that yet, but sure, let's add that to the list of concerns. Why hadn't he done so? Because he didn't want to? Or because he couldn't? I'm hoping it's because he couldn't, because that means he has a power limit of how much he can control at once. Jiang Shi wasn't sure, but Moran knew. He could vividly sense that the pawns in the hall had their tempers, wishes, and even memories intact. They were completely different from the corpses controlled by the shared heart array outside. To use an inexact analogy, the corpses outside were like puppets on strings, while the ones in here were all individual actors. It was obvious why Xu wasn't controlling them. He'd already reached the limits of what he could accomplish with his spiritual energy. Thank goodness. Like, 师宗师, a little help please. A soft voice came from the stone stairs beyond the barrier. Chuaning looked up and saw Hua Binnan at the head of a dozen cultivators besieged on the steps. This was the group who'd been bitten by snakes and stayed behind to rest, and had encountered a second corpse attack on the way over. It feels vaguely suspicious, but sure. Half of the numbers had perished on the stairs, and those remaining had sustained serious injuries as they struggled free. Chuaning reached up without hesitation and cast another barrier, separating them from the revenants on the stairs behind them. Tianwen cracked through the air, driving off the corpses, pressing it in. Here, Chuaning extended a hand to Hua Binnan. Moran, hold on to your man, because I would not put it past Hua Binnan to pull Chuaning into a attack. Moran tensed, ignoring that MEI was halfway through replying salve. He shot to his feet and called out, Shizun, be careful. But Hua Binnan did nothing untoward. He reached for Chuaning with one shaking hand, and Chuaning hauled him behind the stronger protective barrier. Okay, now I'm apparently just as paranoid and as Moran for no particular reason. I need some help over here, Chuaning shouted back into the temple. Those lucky survivors were pulled over one by one and taken to the main hall. They groaned and panted, faces contorted in pain and smeared with blood. Jiang Shi led the Guyi disciples over and bent down before Hua Binnan. How did you get so badly injured? He asked, rare concern visible on his face. I'm fine, sect leader. Please look after the others first. Hua Binnan leaned over against the pillar, his veiled hat torn to shreds and his robes dyed scarlet. Jiang Shi reached out to take his pulse, but Hua Binnan held up a hand. I'm all right. They're all minor injuries. But your disciple, he coughed. He's badly injured. Go attend to him. Don't mind me. All my alarm bells are ringing. Because, like, number one, why is his disciple probably the one that was helping everyone badly injured? You would think they would try and protect him because he's their only hope kind of thing. And also, convenient to direct Jiang Shi's attention away from his pulse, which might give away the fact that he's a Genlong chess piece. And also distract him so that he can do something, whatever he might need to. The entire group was grievously wounded. Some had their legs completely broken in the fray, so Huabinan had indeed been quite lucky if he could still stand. Jiang Shi swore under his breath, cast a final glance at Huabinan, then turned to help with the other cultivators' injuries. Moran, keep an eye on him, please. I'm begging you. Fingers trembling, Huabinan produced a bottle of congealant powder from his Qiankun pouch and moved to sprinkle it over his wounds. A hand reached out without warning and took the bottle. Let me help, Moran said. No need for that. Moran looked at him, eyes dark and deep. It's just some medicine powder. Anyone can do it. Huabinan snatched the bottle out of Moran's hand. I don't like other people touching me. Besides, you're not even a healer. You'll only cause trouble. Here, allow me. Moran turned to see Shumei nimbly settling his healer's pack beside Huabinan. Shumei? At the sight of the pack, Huabinan pursed his lips and fell silent, offering no further resistance. Shumei laid out his needles and bandages. Senior Sage, please forgive this junior for any mistakes. Huabinan said nothing. His wounds were so deep that his bleeding couldn't be stopped by spells. One had to staunch them with spiritual needles first. There was a cold, bright gleam as a dozen flashing needles reflected in Shumei's eyes. He placed them in a blink. Senior, your hat and veil. A hint of shadow flitted through Hanlin the Sage's eyes, but he knew there were several necessary acupoints on his face. I'll do it myself, he said gloomily. His bloodied veil fell, revealing the face Hanlin the Sage concealed from all outsiders. It was an arresting visage. The upper half was handsome, but all the skin below his nose was a burned and twisted mess, the texture raised and spiny. Huabinan looked up, resentment and ridicule flickering in his eyes. What now? Will you stay to watch the show? My apologies. Huabinan sneered behind him. I told you to go. You're the one who insisted on staying. Now you say you're sorry, but who knows what you're really thinking? Probably that Hanlin the Sage looks like a freak, huh? That feels like manipulation, but sure. Moran shook his head. There was little else he could say, so he left. That's exactly what he wants, though. Am I being too paranoid? Master Ma was still fussing over the broken chain while at the front of the temple. Chuaning was reaching the end of his reserves. He turned to Shimeng. Shimeng, take over. Shimeng immediately stepped forward, sword in hand. They changed places seamlessly, not a single corpse squeezing its way in as Shimeng raised his own barriers. As soon as Chuaning released the barrier, he stumbled backward. Moran's heart ached at the sight of his pale face, but he couldn't do anything while others watched. He couldn't even take Chuaning's hand. Shizun, he said, biting his tongue. Are you all right? I'm fine. Chuaning coughed lightly. I just overspent my spiritual energy. Chuaning's spiritual core was fragile. Overtaxing one's spiritual energy might not be worrisome for others, but Moran closed his eyes. In the past life, when he and his teacher had fought on opposite sides of good and evil, this was how Chuaning's core had shattered in their final battle. This was how he'd become no more than an ordinary mortal, with a constitution more fragile than most. How could this be fine? Moran couldn't bear it. Eyes red, he silently slid off the robe Chuaning had lent him. and draped it back over Chuaning's shoulders. Only then could he gently squeeze Chuaning's shoulders beneath the cloth, all the love he bore him hidden in that fleeting touch. You can never be too paranoid with meat bun. Great. I mean, I don't think you're wrong though, but it's not comforting. Helped Chuaning away from the battle at the doors and into a secluded corner. Moran pulled Chuaning down to sit, and in the cover of the shadows silently took Chuaning's hand. His hand was freezing, just as it had been when Chuaning had fallen beneath Moran's sword. When Moran had stepped on his chest and reached out to take him by the chin. Moran lowered his lashes, fingertips trembling. Chuaning had thought to pull away. They were in public after all, but he too felt that tremble. Instead of withdrawing his hand, he locked his fingers with Moran's. Let me see. Chuaning reached out and turned Moran's face from side to side, examining the wounds scattered over his cheeks and his nose. Does it hurt? Shaking his head, Moran stared into Chuaning's face, stared at the man who showed him so much concern even when his own lips had gone grey. It did hurt. Not the wounds, but his heart. He'd finally learned how to lie as Chuaning did. No, said Moran. Then why are you shaking? Moran didn't say anything. He couldn't say anything. Chuaning was left to assume he really was shaking from the pain. A faint jade glow lit up his fingertips. Moran's pupils shrank to pinpricks. He grabbed Chuaning's hand before it could touch his face. Are you insane? Why are you still drawing on your spiritual energy? A little won't hurt, said Chuaning. It's just a minor healing spell to soothe the pain. His fingertips brushed Moran's cuts. A spell to soothe the pain, Chuaning had said, but Moran felt his heart torn to pieces. A death by 1,000 cuts would feel like this. Of course Moran knew this was a tiny amount of spiritual energy, a drop in an ocean, or a cup of water scooped from the sea. Chuaning had nearly given everything to everyone else, and the fraction he'd left for Moran was just this. In the past life he'd hated Chuaning for giving the world so much and himself so little. Back then he hadn't known that, though what Chuaning gave him seemed insignificant, it was all he had. It was all that remained, all he could possibly give. It's done. It's fixed. Master Ma's disciple appeared in the doorway, his cheeks red from exertion. Prepare to retreat immediately. We're closing the doors, he shouted. We're going to close the doors. By this point, HANXUE had taken over the barriers, holding back the reverent horde. Shimeng had sustained a few injuries after taking Chuaning's place, but they were minor, requiring nothing more than a bandage. He sat off to the side, one end of the gauze in his teeth as he tied the knot and watched HANXUE's face their foes. Now that was peculiar. Guys, I don't want to say it, because we're rarely ever that lucky. Usually for some reason there is not a secondary pairing when it comes to danmeis. Not the ones that I've written anyway. But I'm picking up a vibe here with HANXUE and Shimeng. Okay, he seemed to remember HANXUE had a water and wood elemental call, but he was currently using elemental attacks. HANXUE stood at the top of the stairs holding a water-parted zither, strumming the strings with an impassive mien, but what came out was scarlet barrier flames that kept the approaching corpses away. Oh, please tell me we don't have to also worry about HANXUE. I don't have enough worry to spare everyone. Oh my goodness. The doors are closing. HANXUE released the frittered zither which hovered in midair, following his movements as he retreated towards the doors. Shimeng realized something and turned. Can you open the doors a bit more? The zither is too wide, it won't. No need. HANXUE crisply cut Shimeng off and drew the zither swiftly into its case. Without the spiritual flames from its strings, the mass of reverence charged towards them. HANXUE didn't specialize in hand-to-hand combat. Shimeng paled and unsheathed Longcheng, prepared to rush outside and help. A gleam of silver appeared before he made it past the door. A sword materialized in HANXUE's hand. sharp and formidable. He wielded it with shocking speed, then leapt backward as he tossed the sword before him. In an instant, before the doors closed, HANXUE raised his hand and shouted, "Shufeng, return." The sword transformed into a beam of light that shot through the crack, and HANXUE caught it with a clean flourish, bringing it flush to his side. With a boom, the temple doors closed. I don't know whether to be weary of MEI or whether or not we just found a powerful sugar daddy for Shimeng. I'm not 100% here. The corpses and dragon sinew thudded as they clashed into the doors, but the sound seemed distant through the stone. The hall the Nangon clan had so painstakingly constructed was not so easily breached, thank goodness. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Several inexperienced young disciples from the upper cultivation realm quietly crumbled to the ground. Some slightly more competent ones remained on their feet, but howled. What the hell happened here? MEI also let out a soft breath, though his expression of relief was scarcely different from his usual demeanor. If Shimeng hadn't been watching him closely, he might not have noticed the slight parsing of his lips, nor the subtle exhalation that followed. Sensing a terrifying gaze fixed upon him, MEI turned. "What? Why are you looking at me like that?" Shimeng's throat felt dry. "That sword of yours." MEI flicked a glance at the glowing silver longsword in his hand. "Shufeng." Shimeng's expression wavered. "Since when did you use a sword?" Paused. "Wait, the question should be, since when did you have a holy weapon?" "This whole time." "Then why didn't you use it at the spiritual mountain competition?" cried Shimeng. MEI was silent a moment. "I didn't want to." "Is it because you looked down on me?" Shimeng asked, equally baffled and incensed. "If you used your holy weapon, you could have come in second?" MEI shot him a fluid glance. Those icy eyes were almost mocking now. He gazed at Shimeng, flushed with fury for a long beat. "Third place is fine." First, he pursed his lips, leaving parting words to flutter in Shimeng's ears as he walked past. "First place was too dumb." Tell me he's lazy but somehow so powerful that his laziness doesn't matter, cause like, oh, that is the worst kind of person for Shimeng to meet ever. Oh my goodness. Okay, so because I keep like coughing, and I don't know how much longer my voice is gonna hold up, I think I'm gonna have to stop it here for tonight. So I'm so sorry that we only got an hour. And unfortunately, I am not going to be here next week, so we'll only be back to our 3-hour regular live streams on Wednesdays once I'm back, which, let me quickly check the dates. I think it'll already be April by that point. No, it will be the 30th, so we'll have one last stream in, I said April, I meant May. Where is the time gone? Yeah, so we'll have a stream again on the 30th, and then hopefully I will be healthy at that point and not coughing your guys' ears off. So anyway, thank you guys so much for your patience, especially with last week. That nausea came on so suddenly that it honestly shocked me a little bit. So yeah, I hope you guys still enjoyed it, and then I will see you guys in 2 weeks' time. 再见。